and Global Diversity Leadership Exchange. And here in Nashville, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also board member of the American Sustainable Business Council. And I also chair the Race and Equity Working Group, which was created to address the inequities prevalent and pervasive in the economic and social construct of the United States of America, and to hold our legislators accountable to social and economic justice. You can find more information about American Sustainable Business Council and the Race and Equity Working Group at our website, asbcouncil.org. Please join us and sign up. We'd love to have your voices at the table. And let me just start by saying that I really hope that any of you who might be affected by Hurricane Laura are safe and sound. You know, between a hurricane, wildfires in California, an unmitigated pandemic, another Black man, 29-year-old Jacob Blake, murdered by cops in broad daylight and in front of his 3 sons, who are 3 years old, 5 years old, and 8 years old, and on the birthday of his oldest, no less. And global protests like we've never seen before. A sports industry strike, and let's be clear, it's not a boycott. The NBA player action is a strike, not a boycott. Strikes are collective worker power actions. Boycotts are consumer power actions. So let's be clear, it's a strike. It's a statement from not just the NBA, but now you've had the NHL, Hockey League step up. You've had the Major League Baseball step up, tennis. So the time is now, and on top of all of this, our United States postal system is being threatened on the eve of what will be undoubtedly the most stressful, contentious, litigious election in American history. We will have to fight to save our democracy, and we need to prepare. So what can we do? What are you going to do? What is your plan? Do you have a plan? And not just for you, but for your family, your friends, and your community. What can businesses do to ensure that all of our voices are heard this November like they've never been heard before? So today, we're going to hear from some members of our ASBC community who are going to share with you some work that's being done, who have models of what can be done across the states. And I'm excited to bring them to this conversation today. And first, you'll hear from Thomas Appel, who is Executive Vice President of ASBC, who along with Carolyn Pincus, who will provide a review of federal and state legislation. And Thomas is going to do a quick overview, and then Carolyn, who's leading our election efforts, will provide details on the federal and state policy issues, as well as highlight ASBC's election efforts, including unveiling a new map that we will formally launch on Monday that enables anyone to click on their state to find out info about registering to vote, voting by mail or absentee, finding the polling places, and in a new campaign we're launching, providing info on how to volunteer to be a poll worker. You'll hear more about that. I'm just going to turn it over to Thomas and Carolyn and let them talk about that, and then I'll introduce our other speakers. But Thomas, Carolyn, you want to take it up from here?
Thank you, Marianne. It is truly the word that just keeps coming back to me is frightening time, given everything that's going on, and given the disparagement of our democratic, small d democratic processes by the person who is taking a sworn oath to uphold. It's just, well, every day we find a new normal and a new bottom. But ASBC is, with its members, working this fall to encourage voter participation, and not just participation, but what, as Marianne said, we're launching a new campaign. In addition to encouraging our members to provide time off for their employees to vote, we're going to be launching a new campaign about helping to fill the gap that currently exists in terms of providing poll workers at the state and local level. And the gap is obviously largely due to COVID, not solely due to COVID, but you know, hopefully with an increase in people accessing absentee and other ways of mailing in their votes, the requirements for poll workers will be smaller, but there are still going to be serious gaps. So we have developed we're in the process of developing a broad campaign to encourage businesses, encourage our members and other businesses to be involved in a process that is critical to our democracy and therefore critical to our economy. And that's why responsible businesses must take a leadership role and an active role on this. So let me, with that, turn it over to Carolyn, who is spearheading our efforts, overseeing our efforts, and has come up. Let me credit her because she will credit herself, I know, but she has come up with this new map that we are really excited about and will be formally launching on Monday. But I'll let her talk about it. Carolyn.
Hey everyone. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry, there's some thunder going on in the background. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here, and it's you know, a privilege to be a part of this community. And thank you so much for everyone's efforts on this. I'm gonna just have a couple of slides, really, just for me to keep myself organized. So yeah, so as Thomas mentioned, we're working in a few different areas for the upcoming elections. Just some like super brief background, as I'm sure everybody here knows, states, you know, regulate and report their election results to the federal government. So there are limitations in how the federal government, you know, what the federal government can do, but obviously preserving the right for everyone to vote is a responsibility of the federal government. Laws and civil rights, voting rights, you know, banning literacy tests and all of that was up to the federal government. Making voter information available in Spanish and other languages, making sure Americans overseas can vote, and so forth. So that's all part of the federal side of things. There's also there's these two current that are sort of the most, I think, material to the campaign that ASBC is working on. The John Lewis Voting Rights, what is this, the Amendment Act, that basically makes an amendment to Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act that requires any state with a history of voter discrimination, that it basically makes those states subject to federal approval for any changes going forward. And I believe that history goes back 25 years. So if a state has that history within 25 years, they have to go through federal channels for approvals on changes. Related to voting is the Delivering for America Act, which was just passed in the House on Saturday. So that would be largely in the voter by mail, absentee ballot realm, basically prohibiting any further changes that the new postmaster has made that, you know, would change anything operationally, that would cause delays in service. It also provides an additional $25 billion in funding. And I believe that there were some in the, in the House hearing on Monday, there were some interesting developments and commitments that I think were sort of wrangled from the postmaster. If there was funding made available, that he would reinstall machines, but we'll see. That's still in process, so we're monitoring that over here at ASBC. So then the other, you know, area is in states' rights. Jesus Christ, is in states. Well, yeah. states' activities. And we have basically two buckets. We have states that are pushing legislation to expand voter rights. And then we have states that have bills in various stages restricting voter rights. So I suppose the good news is that we have more states that are trying to push expanding voter rights, but we still have around 30 to 40 bills across different states that are looking to restrict. So these, these are around in the expanding voter rights. We have automatic voter registration, same-day registration, ending prison gerrymandering, which is this practice of counting those who are incarcerated within different voter districts in order to expand those districts' influence without allowing the right to vote. So there are a few bills that are looking, I think New Jersey is one of them. And then reducing restrictions on absentee voting as well. And then restrictions are around, so they're sort of related to the absentee and the voter by mail bills around requiring more voter ID, I guess ramping those up, sort of making it more difficult for certain people to assist people who are voting by mail or doing absentee who can deliver the ballots and so forth. And there is some overlap, I think, in a few states, Arizona, New York, Hawaii, that have both expansive bills and restrictive ones. So given all of that, we'll be sort of focusing on these three buckets in the next week or so as the campaign unfolds. So the first is around business action. So encouraging business leaders to provide voluntary time off for employees to vote. However that works best for businesses and organizations. And then even more importantly, this current poll workers shortage that we're facing. I'm sure you guys know a lot of poll workers are often senior citizens who can't work in the polls this year. And so we're facing that shortage. So encouraging businesses to allow staff to work at the polls for the day as well. So on the legislative side, we'll continue to, implore the Senate to vote on the John Lewis Act, the Delivering for America Act, monitoring state developments, especially in these battleground states, which do have these laws introduced, Arizona and Florida, and in these cases could come into effect before the election in November. And also just monitoring battleground states in general, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Minnesota, Michigan. So, and then the last part of this is continuing to add to our resource page, including the registration information, all of the deadlines related to registration, absentee forms, poll worker information. We also really want to promote the National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. And let me see if I can, do you guys see this tab change? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So here is this is the map that will be on the ASBC site. You'll click on your state, Tennessee. You'll have your general election information, registering to vote links, all of the deadline information, and then how to become a poll worker will just open up in another tab. So that's for all 50 states here. And yeah, so I really, if anybody has any suggestions about other legislative actions we can take, I would love to hear that, or any other suggestions or feedback would be great. And otherwise I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Carolyn. Wow, seems like you guys have been really busy. Well, that's good because there's a lot of work to do. So really appreciate it. And before we go to our next speaker, let me just ask Thomas. Thomas, is there anything that you want to add to what Carolyn shared with us at all?
One minor correction. It's actually Section 5 of the 65 Voting Rights Act that the John Lewis bill seeks to restore, and essentially it would require states like, oh, let's just pick one at random, Georgia, that have done things like significant voter purges, eliminating polling places, etc. Any state with a history of suppressing the vote, discriminating against, certain classes of people, would come under this Section 5 provision, which would require any change to go through pre-clearance by the Justice Department. I'm not sure what difference that would make in this Justice Department, but we can always hope. But anyway, we are looking. Carolyn's done, as you can see, and thank you for pointing that out, Marianne. Carolyn's done a tremendous amount of work. That map, I mean, basically she created and did all the coding on that map, which we'll formally unveil on Monday morning. But this is obviously truly critical to an economic system that's going to work for all. That obviously we've been pushing. Can't happen without a small d democratic system that in which everyone has a voice, everyone can participate, and so that's what we're looking for. And let me just reinforce Carolyn's point. Any ideas, any thoughts, suggestions are more than welcome. We may not be able to do them all, but we'll certainly listen and do what we can.
Thank you. Thank both of you. Okay, so next I would like to introduce someone who some of you have heard from before, or if you're lucky enough, may even have met when we had our summit, American Sustainable Business Summit in October of last year. And that's Ms. Tequila Johnson, my ace in the hole when it comes to work in Tennessee on this topic. She's the founder of the Equity Alliance in Tennessee. It's where we both live. And Tequila has taken on a tremendous challenge to register voters and turn out the vote here. And I don't think it's lost on anybody that Tennessee is a challenging state to do this work. And I like to say she's our Stacey Abrams, but that's really not fair to her, because I know Miss Abrams was made famous because of the Georgia election debacle, and there are folks in states across the country who are doing remarkable work. And here in Tennessee, we've got Tequila and her partner, Charlene Oliver, her co-founder, who I hope we should bring her on one day so you can all meet her too. And the two of them really have been leading the charge, and I'm just proud to call her a friend. So I'm gonna let Tequila talk about the work that we're doing here in this state, and I encourage you to take notes, because it's a great model to use wherever you are. And if we can do it in Tennessee, we can do it anywhere.
Hey everyone, Marianne, thank you so much, and thank you for your continued support. It really means a lot, because the work is very heavy. One of the things that I always say is the majority of electioneering or election-based work does not happen by people of color for people of color. And so we are in a unique position, one, as women working around election work, but two, as Black women in the South working in this election workspace. So we need as much, it takes a village, kind of like a child, so we need as much support and help as we can get. I did have slides, but I'm not gonna share them because when I tried to download them, my internet started getting unstable. So I'm just gonna talk about it, which I do often, so I can really do that, and I can share the slides with you, Marianne, after the call, and you can share with people if they wanna have a visual thing to look at. So one of the biggest things that we're working on is increasing voter turnout, in addition to growing from being a Tennessee organization to a regional Southern organization. Which has been really hard and really draining, but it's been very rewarding, just because when we started this, we did not start this thinking that we were gonna grow into this huge organization. We started this because at the time, I was personally experiencing some issues with the criminal justice system, with my child's father who was incarcerated, and on a false charge and had some charges that had been mistakenly added to his sentence. And so I went through the process of trying to get that time taken off the back of his sentence. And it was a 1.5 year long process because the people who were elected to office that handled that process were not accessible. And from there, I started looking at some of the social ills that plagued my community as less of a system and more of a symptom of the system. And so I realized that a lot of these things that we're continuously fighting against aren't necessarily systems, they're symptoms of a larger system at play, which is attached directly to our democracy and the power of our vote. And John Lewis said it, our vote is sacred, and our vote is our passport to Black liberation and to liberation for mostly all marginalized and oppressed communities. And so from there, I quit my corporate job and I dove in head first. And what does it mean to build an equitable democracy? What does equity look like in the sense of democracy and how we utilize our voice? And so the Equity Alliance was born. And at the time I'm still a single mom and we didn't have much money. We paid for it on our credit cards and we were just like, we're just gonna do this to give back. And then a year later, it just blew up. So I'm always working, I feel like, behind the things that are happening to try and catch up to where we are. But it's been a great experience. Just a little bit about the election work that's happening in Tennessee. It is a mess, as you guys can probably see. Our governor just signed a bill that essentially would criminalize peaceful protesters for sleeping on state property. I've been on calls all morning with ACLU and different national organizations about what can we do, because this has to be unconstitutional. One of the state legislators came out and said, if these people are gonna sleep on the Capitol stairs instead of doing what we asked them to do, then we're gonna make sure that they don't ever have a voice in democracy. We're gonna make it a felony so that their voting rights will be stripped away from them. He said that on record. And so when you talk about restoring Section 4B of the Voting Rights Act, Tennessee was not a part of the Voting Rights Act, primarily because the way our Constitution was written, it was written so that certain people would not be omitted from voting, but that was not geared towards minority populations. One, because Tennessee was the home of the KKK, and a lot of federal soldiers had been targeted, or soldiers from the Confederate had been targeted, and one of the things that they were taking away, well, the Union was taking away, was their voting rights. And so Tennessee kind of was able to use that to kind of shift the way the formula worked for them. But in the process of it, we developed some of the more strictest voting laws. In fact, Pew Charitable Trust every year ranks states in terms of how well they are, how easy it is to vote. In 1999, Tennessee was considered the 48th easiest state to vote. Here in 2020, we are the 3rd hardest state to vote in. And so we have one of the strictest voter ID laws. Tennessee is also the only state that requires court fines, child support, and fees all together be paid before a felon can have their rights restored. A similar state is Texas, but Texas does not consider child support an attachment to your prison sentence. Tennessee does. Another thing about Tennessee, the average prisoner leaves prison with about $30,000 in child support debt, because when you're incarcerated in Tennessee, your child support continues to accrue. It does not stop. It keeps going. And it keeps going at the rate in which you was incarcerated. So for example, in the personal case of my child's father, when he was incarcerated, he had a pretty good job as a welder. So he was making about $1,000 a week, which is a lot of money. His child support was probably about $1,000 a month. And when he went to prison for that 1.5 years, that $1,000 compounded interest every month. And then, we've had this issue with trying to get rights restored. Most recently, we passed a voting rights restoration bill. It made it all the way to the Senate subcommittee floor, primarily because the libertarians are wanting child support for whatever reason. They want voting rights restored because they say it costs the state more money. So that's kind of why it progressed that far. But it was killed in Senate subcommittee because women who are single moms who were owed child support advocated against the bill. And one of the things that we learned in the process of that is that 11% of every child support debt that is collected that a person owes interest on is the minimum that the state will give to the mom. So the state legally can take 50% before taxes, and they are only allowed to give or required to give the mom 11%. So that was something that was mind-blowing. Election protection also is a huge issue here. A federal judge here in the state just shot down voting by mail as using COVID as an excuse. So for people who want to use absentee ballots or vote by mail ballots, you have to be over 65, or you have to qualify for it based off of your health or be a college student or something like that. But it cannot be because you have pre-existing conditions and you're afraid of COVID. So people who want to go vote absentee that don't have a note from their doctor cannot vote absentee. The other bad thing is in Tennessee, we do not have drop boxes. So your mail-in ballot has to be it has to be received by the day, by election day. So if it's postmarked 3 days before election and it doesn't get there to 2 days after, it's thrown out. It has to be in their hands on election day. So that right there is like a huge thing. And because Tennessee is not what they consider a battleground state, the level of investment in Tennessee is extremely low. So there aren't enough resources to really actively engage in election protection at the level that we need, meaning having people behind the scenes counting votes, having enough poll watchers in areas where we know that there is going to be some tactics used to keep people from voting. It's just not enough. We're short 18,000 poll workers as of yesterday. There has been pressure on the Secretary of State to lower the age. So he has lowered the age to 16. So one of the things that we're working on right now is recruiting poll workers and recruiting poll watchers. A lot of our work is really centered in election organizing. So we are all about voter education, voter registration, restoration, and actually getting people to the polls. But one of the things that we realized is election protection goes hand in hand with that. So we're using the work that we're doing existingly to kind of build that infrastructure and that base, that grassroots base, to pull those people into a lot of the election protection work. One of our goals this year, Marianne, was to register 50,000 voters. We started off at 10,000 voters, and then we hit that goal in a month. We went to all the protests and registered voters, and people were like fired up about it. And so we moved it up to 50,000, and we're already at like 35,000 with a month left to go. So that things have been really interesting in terms of engagement. People are extremely excited about this election. I think what we're seeing in the country in terms of race wars and everything that's happening, our president, everything that's going on is really waking people up. The NFL, NBA, NHL, all of those things that are happening are really touching some people. And so for us, it is about being at the grassroots level to be able to really capture those people as they are having this political awakening, so to speak. And so I like for people to ask me questions because I'm a talker and I can ramble, but I want to know if anyone has any questions. And I want to really the things that you talked about, Carolyn, they were really, really like in alignment with some of the things that we're doing on a state level. Again, we are working to expand regionally because a lot of the organizing that we do is centered in the African-American culture, which is what has been our success. And we realize that a lot of the work that happens nationally happens from this lens that kind of buckets everybody into African-American organizing, and the South has its own plight, and no one is speaking directly to the South.
Wow, that's incredible. As I'm listening to you talk, Tequila, I even though I think I'm aware of how repressive it is in Tennessee, listening to that litany it's mind-boggling. So let me ask you this. So do you see progress? I know you've been doing this for, I don't know how many years, 3-4 years now. So do you think that like in 2020, that registration and, determination, excitement, is it on the uprise? Should we be a little bit more optimistic? I know that we're not going to turn Tennessee blue. That's not going to happen. But if we just get the voter turnout, what kind of increase do you think we'll get?
Yeah, so in terms of numbers, we have an opportunity in the next 8 years to turn Tennessee blue.
Oh, wow.
The issue is, unfortunately, the progressive side does not see a reason to invest until we're at a place where they can see return, meaning we become a battleground state for national elections. So the problem is, because of that, we oftentimes don't have the resources needed to invest at the state level, which is where a lot of the repressive policy comes from. So we're always kind of in this I like to say, fighting an uphill battle. We're trying to build up enough progressive infrastructure to showcase the need for investment long term. But in the process of doing that, every time we do that, we have a big win. The state comes in and they just like smack us down. I know, in 2018, we registered almost 100,000 people to vote, and Black people. So not just
Go
people,
ahead, girl.
Black people to vote. But the result of that was the state passed a bill that would basically criminalize large-scale voter registration for mistakes on forms. And so the same thing with the peaceful protest that was happening. They ended up growing that from like a 3-person thing to like a 200-300 people were sleeping at the Capitol every day. And it was making national news. And people were coming trying to figure out what was happening in Tennessee. And as you can see, that kind of protest and that kind of civic engagement led to a lot of people getting on the state ballot. Like Congressman Cooper, who is our sitting Democrat, was challenged by a Black woman who's never ran for office, and she got like 42% of the vote. That's a huge deal. Marquita Bradshaw ran for U.S. Senate and is the first Black woman to ever be the Democratic nominee in the state of Tennessee. And so what did our state legislature do? They had a special convening and they passed a bill to limit protests because it was drawing too much attention to the things that were happening. And so, what happened, the next thing that happened, our gerrymandering laws. They passed a bill last year that essentially would give them more power to redistrict and to gerrymander without having input from the local level, like city municipality level. So they're like, every time we make 5 strides ahead, they knock us back 10. So the issue is like, there has to be, which is why we really want to start growing, because a lot of the work that we do in Tennessee is huge. And when I talk to people that do run national organizations, they're so impressed. But I'm like, national organizations are the ones that are always showcased. And so for us to really grow the need for some of that real intentional organizing in the South, we have to grow our brands bigger, which is scary as hell to me, but it's kind of what's needed. Tennessee, what we've seen is like a 17% in the progressive vote share in suburban counties. Gentrification, you have a lot of people, 150 people a day are moving to Nashville, and they're moving in our urban core. And what's happening is the Black and brown people that live in the urban core are being forced out of the urban core. And so yes, that's a bad thing. But the silver lining in that all is that we have a lot of state legislatures that are repressive and passing repressive bills that live in these rural counties that only have 500-600 people voting. And so now what's happening is people that are from the urban cores are being forced in those counties, and it's shifting their progressive vote share. And you have people from the coastal counties, coastal states such as California, New York, where they tend to be more progressive, moving to Nashville. And so you're keeping the progressive vote share in the urban core, and you're pushing it out into the suburban and rural areas. And they're about to gerrymander Tennessee. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I know it's going to be crazy, because they're starting to see like, oh man, like 2 years ago, I won with 1,000 votes, and now I'm winning with only 25 votes. And so they're scared. They are very afraid. And we're at the core of like really shifting that. But there is an opportunity to shift Tennessee blue in like 8, maybe before then, because Black turnout increased by 415% in 2018, which we were only projecting it would increase by like 112. Youth turnout increased by like 1,200%, which was like 5 times what we projected or assumed it to be. So there is like a lot. And then even in the primaries, you had about 40% of the Republican vote flipped and pulled Democrat ballots.
Mm.
That's why, that's one of the reasons why the progress that TILA is making and that others are making in other traditionally red states, that's why we need the John Lewis bill. That's why we need the protection of the Federal Voting Rights Act, so that when progress does get made, state legislators, conservative state legislators can't come back in and say, okay, we're just going to pass these laws that suppress you in new ways. So we need the federal level protection that says, no. You can't change polling places. You can't change the laws. You can't make it a felony to use the First Amendment rights to assemble or to speak out. But anyway, great job, great job.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, that was that was riveting, Tequila. I'm sitting here, I took a ton of notes, and we need to continue to talk to see if we can't funnel some more energy your way in terms of support via financial contribution, or I see somebody in the chat has already volunteered pro bono legal services for you. But so does anyone else listening have any other thoughts or questions for Tequila before I introduce Mark, who is going to be a excellent transition to some of the information that Tequila has shared. Does anyone else have anything for Tequila? Or you can save your questions to the end in case, if you think of some too, because she'll be with us for another 15 minutes or so. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So one thing you said, Tequila, and this is made me think of Mark. Oh, wait. Crystal asks Tequila, what do you most need from businesses?
Ooh, that's like, one, stop creating PACs and supporting Republican state legislatures that pass progressive bills. But more so, like, I think the biggest thing that businesses can do is to, like, one, obviously talent, time, and treasure, is invest your time and your money and your talents into more grassroots organizations, but also to grow the brand of local organizations. During this like Black Lives Matter movement time, one of the things that I realized is a lot of national organizations raise millions of dollars, millions, and those dollars never funnel to the people who are actually on the ground doing the work. And so the return on investment, while it may look good because of branding, like branding in this work is so important, it may look good, but the downside is the return is not as substantial as it would be if you directly invested in working on the ground. And I know that that's hard because if you don't, most smaller organizations, we're not in the New York Times, we're not in the Post, so you don't really hear about us much. But I think some intention from the business community should be placed on how do we pick not just the battleground states where everybody's investing, not just at the national level where everybody's investing, but how do we pick the bottom 4 states that are the hardest to vote in and find the least funded organizations and use our time and our talents, like what Laura's doing, and our treasures to help build those organizations up so that they are in a position where they can kind of help to create some substantial and some sustainable change. Because what ends up happening is Black Lives Matter is not putting in money in the States. It's staying at a national level. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. That money stays here. And so we have Black Lives Matter chapters in Nashville that have 2 people. And we're fundraising to get people bailed out. You know what I mean? So I think that I feel comfortable saying that in front of all of you guys, but I, to be honest, as a Black woman, culturally, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that on a national platform. But we need business owners who are in those positions to really advocate for us.
Well, that's awesome. So for all of you listening, just imagine if we invested $1 million in Tequila and Charlene and what they're doing at the Equity Alliance. Just imagine that. What a force. And I want you all to remember that, you know, and I'm trying to work with Equity Alliance in as much as I can, at least in giving platform so that Tequila can share her story, because as you all are listening, it's amazing what she's been able to accomplish and what together with her partner on such minimal funds. Just imagine if we invested. So, there's something you said in your storyline, Tequila, that I thought is really important, and it brings up our next speaker. And that is, when you try to get something done, go through the process of getting an approval that you needed from a government office, that when you got there, that's where you can get blocked because of who who is responsible for approving or you know, making sure that something is budgeted for. It matters. It matters at every level. So our next speaker, Mark Haynes, represents an organization called Inclusive America. They're at inclusiveamerica.org, and it's a nonprofit that will help make the government as diverse as the people of the United States. And Mark brings an important aspect of our democracy that is critical at this moment. So, Mark, if you could talk to us a little bit about representation in government and the work that you're doing with your organization to help, you know, to help us in this process of getting back our democracy.
Sure, great. Thanks so much. Thanks, Tequila, for all your work. As Tequila shows, it really matters getting the right people in these positions. That's why we need to vote for all these great people, because then they make the decisions that affect all of our lives. And so as quick background, I worked on the National Security Council in the last administration as an advisor to Vice President Biden. And there were many meetings with only white men or majority white men. And so I started asking who is trying to make sure our government as a representative democracy is trying to pull from the best talents across all of America so that we are more representative. And the majority of the resources, sort of like Tequila, there's different people focus on different things. A lot of the resources tend to focus on the people who are running for office on Congress at the federal level, and not nearly as much on the executive side. So the federal government, as some of you may know, is the largest employer in the world with over 2 million people. And no one knows what the demographic makeup is of those 2 million people. So that's the gap that my co-founder and I are trying to start with, is to make sure our executive branch is more reflective of the American people. We're zooming in on the top 5,000. So anyone who's president of the United States can appoint 5,000 people, every ambassador, every cabinet member, multiple levels below. And so what we do is 3 things. We call it educate, elevate, and advocate. So on the educate part is we're trying to show how bad the problem has been. So we've secured 23 years worth of personnel data for every person who's had one of these 5,000 jobs. And we try to do our best to tag them along 7 different categories: age, gender, race, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and veteran status. We're about 3/4 done for that exercise, and it's very clear many positions have only been held by white men. So for example, we've never had a woman ambassador to Germany, Italy, Spain, Russia, Turkey, China. We've not had an African-American undersecretary of state, 3rd in line in the last 20 years. We've never had an openly gay person on the Federal Reserve Board. There are 3 cabinet positions we've never had a woman in American history. So there's all these unfortunate gaps where we are tending to only fill them with the same profile, as former National Security Advisor Susan Rice calls them, male pale from Yale is the traditional profile. And so once we complete this baseline, then the question is, how do we fix it? One piece is to work in coalition with as many groups to build a binder or database full of qualified underrepresented people, so we can eliminate the excuse that the only qualified people are that Yale male pale from Yale profile, and eliminate the excuse that they couldn't find anyone outside of that traditional profile. The other piece is to look at the systemic and structural changes to make the workplace more inclusive. So we're looking to the private sector, nonprofit sector for best practices, things like pay equity, parental leave, unconscious bias training, paid internships, sponsorships, and mentorships. And so we're trying to gather that big list and then figure out how do we get government to adopt or adapt that. Generally, that happens through executive orders. So we're working with a law firm to have a draft executive order ready for whoever wins in November. We're working with another law firm to draft an implementation guide, because we want to shorten the time for the 15 departments and agencies to implement that executive order or a version of it. There's also legislation. There's 4 bills currently that have been introduced that try to touch on making government more diverse and inclusive. So we'd like to pass those or get those reintroduced. And finally, we're going upstream to a lot of the people Tequila and others are focusing on, and that's people who are running for office, because that's when they're most vulnerable for raising money, getting votes, getting media. So we're targeting 66 candidates for Senate this cycle and the 2 presidential candidates on our website called pledgefordiversity.org. We're about to launch it, like you guys are trying to launch your map. We're trying to launch it early next week. And the goal is to engage as many of these candidates to take a pledge to make our government more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. So we have 4 specific policy proposals, and we've recruited a coalition of over 70 organizations and recruited over 50 former secretaries, deputy secretaries, and retired generals and admirals to show that this idea is not fringe or kooky, but rather really important and worthy of their serious consideration. So that's the full scope of what we're trying to do at Inclusive America.
Thank you. That's it was a pleasure meeting you, Mark. What it's only been like 3 weeks ago when I heard about the work that you were doing. I immediately recognized how important it is because you know, a lot of the roadblocks that we experience and a lot of this journey is made harder by the fact that we're not included in the decision making, that our voices are not represented in places of power that we're not even thinking about. So I'm excited about what you guys are doing, and we at ASBC are committed to helping, you know, you in your goal and your mission, and invite everyone on the call. Again, please go to inclusiveamerica.org, learn more about the organization, and if you're interested, throw your hand up. You know, if there's something that an area of service where you need more information or that you're interested and have questions about, you know, Mark's the go-to guy, and I know I'm going to be following up. Who knows? I might apply for something. So thank you. But does anyone have any questions for Mark?
There seems to be crickets. I would say, at least for our biggest ask, is we've got less than 70 or a little over 70 days to the election day. And so if folks are trying to engage their Senate candidates in those 33 states that are up for this cycle, our website at pledgefordiversity.org is built so that anyone can go on and tweet at the candidates to urge them to take the pledge. So we'd love to get as many folks that you know, because personnel is policy, and so we want to get the right people in these right positions.
Okay, so thank you, Mark. And so I don't know if all of you are paying attention to your chat. We just got a note from Kay Johnson, and it looks like there's a lot of capital letters in it. So she wants us to get the word out. About hand-marked ballots are important to avoid hackable election machines. Yeah, so pay attention to the chat, and what we'll do is capture this session is being recorded, and we are capturing the chat information, and we'll make sure that we share it with everyone. So Kay, thank you for the message. We're paying attention. Oh, there you are. Do you want to say something? Hi.
I just wanted to say it's very important to vote by hand. If you have to go to the polls on the election day, vote by hand. Don't vote if you can help it by election machine, because that's where the hackable situation occurs. And we had a statistician in Kansas for the 2016 election prove that it happened in Kansas. So I'm a member of League of Women Voters. We're encouraging everyone to vote by hand or vote by mail-in ballot, which you can either drop off in Kansas, you can drop it off in a drop box.
Okay. So that's interesting. So Tequila, this idea of the mail-in ballot, you said that absentee ballots are not accepted, and we don't have drop boxes. So how might this make sense in Tennessee? I'm curious.
You should be able to vote by hand ballot.
Yes, you can vote by hand ballot. We have the new ballot reading machines that give you back the receipt, which was supposed to stop election fraud, kind of what Kay's talking about. But again, it just boils down to you really, you cannot vote. You can vote by mail, but COVID cannot be used as an excuse to vote by mail per a federal judge. And if you are over 65, or you are, for whatever reason, have a pre-existing condition that your doctor approves that you can't go to the polls, then you have to make sure you get your ballot in early. And people are saying expect 2 to 3 week mail delays. So
unfortunately, that I understand that with the post office, and those states that don't have mail-in ballots are at a definite disadvantage during COVID. I would say for long term, people should work on mail-in ballots as changing the laws in their state.
Yeah, I think, Kay, I think that's a really valid point. We should be fighting for a new system for how we vote anyway, because all of the drama that we're experiencing is making it more difficult. But what I'm hearing is that the work that Carolyn has been doing with ASBC with state by state instructions on what's going on and how to vote and where the polls are, and getting as much information about your particular voting area is important. And it's important to know that now, because if this is August, we're already almost into September. If there's something you need to be doing, you get it done now. So make sure that you're aware of when early voting starts. I know I and my son were early vote, and somebody was suggesting the idea of strolls to the polls, where on weekends when people get together, that you work on organizing and then make it fun, and just break it up and start as soon as early voting starts. Start voting, and do it in groups as to make sure that your friends and family and community are engaged as well.
One of the real important things is that you have a plan to vote. And that's one of the things that League of Women Voters is saying, have a plan to vote. And that can easily be put out on social media. How do you plan to vote? What needs do you need to find out about? Where do you vote? Are you registered? And we are encouraging everybody to check their registration again, because they could have been purged from the last time they voted. It makes me furious, but they could have been purged. And in the other situation is if their ballot was not considered a full ballot. It's called a provisional ballot in Kansas. If for some reason there was a signature problem, you can also call your registration office and ask if they had a provisional ballot issue in the previous election with their registration. And we're encouraging people to do that if they think there is a possibility. Also, the signatures need to be very carefully done. Your driver's license signature needs to be the same signature on your voter's registration card and your voter's registration. If you're not sure, look at your driver's license and re-register. And you have time to re-register right now in most states for the general election.
Thank you. So we're down to our last 4 minutes, and so I just want to, any closing thoughts about how businesses can help? What can businesses do? I know that at the ASBC we're encouraging businesses to give your employees a day off to go vote, and that's only one thing. But if anybody has any thoughts about how businesses can support this election, clearly also, as Tequila has mentioned, if you're making a contribution to a nonprofit or organization that's doing this work, please remember the grassroots organizations, in particular the Equity Alliance, and you guys have information on how to reach her there. But if there's any other thoughts or ideas about how business can step in and engage and encourage voter turnout, this would be great. So I'll leave the floor open, and then Thomas, if you have anything else that you want to add before we go, because I know you guys are going to have to go back to work. So.
This is obviously critically important work, and everyone, please, if we can be helpful in any way, please reach out to ASBC or asbcouncil.org. We'll have the map up live on Monday, and you can check to make sure what deadlines for registration are. If you need to get re-registered, if you need to find out your polling place, how to volunteer to be a poll worker, etc. So, and I would particularly, if there are any lawyers on the call, Lawyers are always handy to have around on election day, just to make sure that that the laws are being implemented and executed fairly and evenly. I know I've had way too many experiences where I remember one particular experience in Greenville, Mississippi, where in the largest African-American precinct in what was then the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi, we got there at 6 a.m. to find that the power supply had been cut with what was clearly an axe. And the courthouse was mere 2-3 blocks away. It took almost 3 hours to get paper ballots to that polling place. And of course, a lot of people couldn't wait. They had to get to work. So we spent a good part of the day trying to get back everybody who had been there ready to vote at 7 a.m. When the machines didn't work. So yeah, there, you know, for every way that there is to try to keep some folks from voting, and we all know who those some folks are, then they'll be, just as Tequila pointed out, there'll be another way to try and prevent them. So thank you all for your interest, and please do reach out to ASBC if we can help.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Tequila, Kay, Carolyn, everyone else who participated and had comments. We look forward to our next conversation, which will be next month, and just we'll be sending out an e-blast soon to keep you apprised of our upcoming forum. Thank you so much. Go out and vote.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll prevail.